They have to look at us and say, yeah, you're like a normal, respectable person. I can identify with you. The second thing that has to happen is you're doing something that I don't do. If someone looks completely different from you and has nothing to do with you, then I don't care what you do. I mean, you can do whatever you want. It's not relevant to me because you're just the totally other. However, if people just like instantly, spontaneously identify with you and they see you're doing something different, it's like, hey, why are you doing that? But if that initial identification doesn't take place, in terms of social psychology, you never get to the next point. And that's why we see, for example, if you look at the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Chaitanya Bhagavat, all the standard biographies of Mahaprabhu, that all the evidence we have is that when he went out on Harinam, when he inaugurated Nagar Sankirtan, Harinam Sankirtan, that he and all his followers were dressed like everybody else. They were actually just normal citizens. They were just normal citizens. And therefore, the only question people asked was, why are you chanting Hare Krishna? That was the only question. And so in a sense, I believe, this is not a criticism, I don't blame anyone. I think the devotees have extraordinary sincerity and devotion. They're trying very hard to please Prabhupada. This is not at all a criticism. It's simply an observation. I think that in our sincerity and devotion, we have actually made it more difficult for people than Lord Chaitanya did. Lord Chaitanya appeared, 500 years ago when, 500 years ago in India, you can imagine how people were, in a sense, Krishna conscious. And yet, he made it easier than we make it. He didn't erect this high wall of separation between himself and the public. And again, this is not anyone's fault. It's no one's fault. There's no blame to be attributed here. It's simply my own conviction that, and Prabhupada himself, till one time I was walking with Prabhupada in Mayapur. We were alone, and he told me that some people in India were criticizing him. Surprise, surprise. Some people were criticizing him because they said, you fly around in commercial jets, but Lord Chaitanya walked around India. And Prabhupada said, should I be a fool and imitate Mahaprabhu? So if someone says you must dress like Mahaprabhu, then why shouldn't I walk like he did? Why am I driving a car? Why am I using a computer? Why do I use a cell phone? In other words, who gets to decide what is essential following? So what I understand from Prabhupada, again, read his purport, 4854. He says that take all risks, make all adjustments for time and place, so that people in every country can be comfortable with Krishna consciousness. So that's Krishna West. Yes, Drista.
It's interesting because his idea of innovation is very exciting, and I can really feel the wave of innovation is really will bring people closer. Now, what I see in America though is that people are materialists. And they will feel more comfortable with us if they think that we're materialists. And they like the Mormons, basically, because they're materialists. So, is it off the wall to adjust the philosophy to be more like Christianity, prosperity gospel? In other words, you chant Hare Krishna and you'll get rich. You chant Hare Krishna, you'll be a successful person. And then emphasize that as amongst devotees. In other words, don't emphasize so much spiritual aspect, but emphasize material well-being, getting ahead. Be a good example of that. In other words, they're going to see people making $200,000 a year. They're going to see people who've got good cars, and we're going to say, we chant Hare Krishna, and we get this. Is that so far off the wall we can't do it?
Well, let's think about how far off the wall it is.
I mean, if people eventually get to be
devotees, okay. Well,
can we do that? Just brazenly go out and say, you become better materialists.
I get it. Okay, first of all, I'll say the things in favor of it, and then I'll try to delineate the limitations and the boundaries of that. First of all, Prabhupada himself did that sometimes. Not just financially, but he would say that. He'd say, you'll be healthy if you're Krishna conscious. he would actually say to people, look, you're working so hard. We have beautiful houses, we have cars. Like, just, join the movement, you'll have all material facility. And Krishna himself says, as Prabhupada quoted, that Ananyas chintayanto mang ye jana pariyupasate tesham nitya vijuktanang yoga kshemam bahamiham. For those who are always devoted to me, always thinking of me, etc., I personally bring them all they need. And then you have Yudhisthira, for example, in the Bhagavatam, 10th canto, where Yudhisthira at first is reluctant to perform the Rajasuya sacrifice because Yudhisthira is sort of a Brahmin and a Kshatriya devotee. Yudhisthira was always very, very Brahminical, you could say. And so then Krishna and his brothers insisted, no, we really need to do the Rajasuya. And so then Yudhisthira says, okay, now I will be enthusiastic to do it for this reason. Because the Rajasuya sacrifice establishes one man as a Samraj, the emperor, and as the most powerful ruler. And Yudhisthira said, I want the world to see the benefits of service to Krishna. And so just like we may build a beautiful temple, we want, and Prabhupada would always play this card that, we're doing well, we're prosperous, so why don't you become a devotee? Now, let's see what some of the natural boundaries are. For one thing, if you say we can just, we're not going to just go out like one of those mega churches, you can be rich, just pray, tell me what you want, we'll pray for you to get that job, to get that woman, to make that money. We're not going to become crass and vulgar like that. And also, when you do that, what happens is that you lose control. Because let's say you make and this was Prabhupada's constant fear. Prabhupada he wanted to expand, but his determination to expand was balanced by a fear of the wrong kind of growth. Because Prabhupada always said that you will lose control. Because let's say you go out and preach like that, you make thousands of members, the next generation, they're in charge. There's a lot more of them. And they give all the donations, and they say, okay, unless you want your whole thing to collapse overnight, put us on the board. And now...
I think that's happening already.
Okay. So, moving right along.
No, but, yeah,
I understand what you mean. We understand each other. Yeah. But I will say this, that there is a way to encourage prosperity without sacrificing spirituality. For example, I've said for decades, crying out in the wilderness, I've been saying for a long time that if you are a grihastha, and you're not simply a temple Brahmin, then you should excel in your profession. We need successful people, not only financially, but just in terms of social influence. We want devotees to be... Sometimes grihasthas kind of fall into this middle zone where, I can't really get into my spiritual life as much as I'd like to because I have too many duties, and I can't really get into my duties because it's kind of profane. And so therefore they just do what they need to get by. And if that's what someone needs to do, ultimately everyone has a right to do what they need to do. If someone says, that's the way I need to live in order to be happy and Krishna conscious, then do it. Everyone's first right is just to do whatever they need to do to have a peaceful spiritual life. However, if someone is able to succeed, then do it. And Prabhupada once told a joke. Prabhupada was actually very funny. He would always joke. And someone told him or he'd seen a picture of some so-called guru, Swami, who his famous pose was they would dump a bunch of money in front of them. And then he would say, when I see all the money in my hands, just turn away from it. And Prabhupada said, okay, you can take a picture of me grabbing all the money. Because as we know, that's yukta vairagya, because Prabhupada is pure and he wasn't going to use it for himself. But yeah, of course we want our devotees to be successful. We want them to show the world. In fact, that's how Christianity became a world religion. You had all these Christians who really took seriously their professions, and they were really model citizens. And therefore, they gradually, to some extent, the Roman Empire was a meritocracy. Obviously it was also corrupt, but to some extent, merit was rewarded. And so they got themselves into these high positions. The Roman hierarchy At a certain point, according to historians, when Constantine adopted Christianity and kind of destroyed it in a sense, but he realized that he desperately needed to unite the empire because there were all kinds of fractures and fissures and so on. And so he chose Christianity because they were so highly placed. So in the same way, devotees should excel in whatever they do. If you're an engineer, be the best engineer. If you're a doctor, be the best doctor. Of course, not to the extent of neglecting your spiritual life. But whatever we do, we should do well. And so I'm absolutely in favor of that.
What's the best way to cultivate? I can see that what you're saying is absolutely true. I mean, there's no question. If we're successful and we project success, and we're also spiritually strong.
Yes, both.
What's the best way to get from here to there? I mean, because right now there's so many devotees who don't seem to, the juggling act doesn't work, and can't catch the ball,
Right.
So how do we
trying to juggle a spiritual career and a material career?
and it seems that sometimes they drop everything. But the point is, how are we going to encourage that? I mean, I think the idea of Krishna West is great.
Okay. Answers are us. I would say that when Prabhupada was here, and when we were really on the march, devotees were so enthusiastic, they had so much energy, they actually did more. So that, I remember when I first joined the movement, I had this powerful experience. When I joined the movement in 1969, we would just go out on Sankirtan all day. We'd literally do 10 hours of Sankirtan, like 6 days a week. And so I was sent out to sell incense and back to God. At first it was like I was in agony, and no, I don't mean spiritual bliss, because I came from a nice family, and like the last thing in the world I ever wanted to do was to go out in public and go on the street and try to sell people something. It was like torture for me, because I was like this proud young student at Berkeley, but I did it. At first it was like so painful because probably a lot of you can identify with this. So, but then I had to soldier on. I have to just be Prabhupada's soldier. I've got to do this. It's my duty. And as I did it, I began to see how I was rapidly advancing. I was like cutting through my false ego. It was painful, but it was the pain of invasive surgery. And Krishna was really purifying me. And then I got to the point after a month or two of Telegraph Avenue. Telegraph Avenue is the main student street in Berkeley, going up to campus. And I have so many memories of every street corner. There's like 8 different street corners, because like there's 4 streets, main streets crossing, and then each corner. I mean, I could probably like 12 street corners. I mean, when I go to Berkeley, I look at every corner and I get flashbacks. So I spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours out there in those street corners, and it was good. So then we made a couple new devotees. Like, this was 1969, so one devotee, he was this hippie boy, and we almost had to hire a U-Haul trailer to cart his hair off. I mean, we shaved him up. But anyway, so we got these 2 hippies that joined, and they didn't want to go out on the street, because they, that was like, no man, I don't want to, pressure. So they made a deal, they cut a deal with the president, where they would stay back and clean the whole temple. They'd do anything, just don't send me out on the street. And I remember being out on the street, and even though I was always kind of suffering a little bit, but it was ecstatic, but I was suffering. I remember thinking to myself, how are they going to advance? How are they going to advance? Because I knew very well that as much as I loved the temple and worshipped the temple, that my real advancement, the powerful progress I was making, was out there on the street. And perhaps because it was so, I didn't like it. But I knew it was, and of course they didn't make it. They left after a while. Okay, the good news for everybody is, I'm not saying get out on the street. Like every day. But the point is, we have to figure out intelligent, appropriate ways to spread this movement. And this gets back to your question. The more all of us are electrified by Prabhupada's own enthusiasm, by this Sankirtan mission, the more we'll be more intelligent, our our intelligence will get very sharp, we'll have more energy, you'll go to work, and in less time than before, you'll just see exactly what to do, because Krishna will be, you'll be like an efficiency monster. Because you'll be so inspired and so intelligent, you'll have so much energy, and you'll convince other people to do things because you're just like more powerful than they are. And so I think Sankirtan is the desire tree that yields all our wishes. Now we've ISKCON has definitely plateaued out, in the sense that, and again, the devotees are great souls. They are. They're very special souls that Krishna personally selected. And yet, because, historically speaking, no one really expects that any day now it's just all going to explode and hundreds of people are going to start, beating at our doors, can I be Hare Krishna? It could happen. There are prophecies that someday will be fulfilled. But we're kind of, it's just sort of, we just sort of go along. And we're sort of, and you have to be content with the situation we're in, because, because that's what it is. You have to resign yourself to the real world. My message is that Krishna will again create a Hare Krishna explosion. So if you missed the first one, get in on the second one. And that extraordinary enthusiasm, that ecstatic inspiration, where at every moment you're in the spiritual world, and Krishna's empowering you and speaking through you, and you actually see with your own eyes, you see the movement growing, and you see us becoming more and more relevant. That will happen again if we just get into it. And it's actually it is the Sankirtan movement that is the source of our prosperity, spiritually and professionally. Because the Sankirtan movement, because matter comes from spirit. It is spirit that moves matter. And the more spiritually powerful we become, and in this age, there's only one way to become spiritually powerful, and that's by joining Gaur Nitai and Prabhupada in their Sankirtan movement. And as we grow and become more powerful, as they say, a rising tide lifts all boats. So as we become more enthusiastic, more powerful, more inspired, more intelligent, every aspect of our life will flourish. Yagyayar Sankirtana Prayar. It is Sankirtan. Yes?
I've been getting back to Godhead for many years, and certainly when people want to know what Hare Krishna stuff is about, this is a very public face for it. But just as for instance, in this latest issue, there was an article about what we should do to change government to solve the world's problems, especially in the United States. And the prescription was that the only people who should hold office were Brahmana and Krishna conscious, and it went on to describe a theocracy. And this is so completely contrary to the whole idea of this country, and of not only this country but also European history. And I was just really astonished, and I was just wondering, when this kind of message comes out in an official sort of organ of ISKCON, that is totally unacceptable to a society that does not have castes.
Yes.
That is, that is blessed by having a separation of church and state, which allows us to do what we're doing without. If there's going to be a church religion, it's not going to be Hinduism.
Yes.
It's a state religion. So, I'm wondering how. Clearly, the whole idea of Krishna West would be very different from this, because So I'm wondering what your reaction is to articles like this, of which there are many, that are at right angles
Yes.
to the whole idea of being an American.
Yes. Yeah. Right on, brother. First of all, we're going back to Godhead. It is no longer really the official magazine of the Hare Krishna movement. In fact, at a certain point in ISKCON's history, many devotees stopped reading it. And I don't mean to be critical, it's just I'm being descriptive. And they found that overwhelmingly their market, for their own survival, that the people who generally buy Back to Godhead, almost all of them, are people from a Hindu background. And therefore, in order to basically make sure that their customers renew their subscriptions, they gear the magazine, they design the magazine to please the people who are buying it. Which is fine, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we should have magazines for many different communities. For academics, for Christian, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But that's what it is. So Back to Godhead many years ago sort of gave up trying to sell themselves to a Western audience because it just didn't work. Now, as far as that article on theocracy, yeah, obviously what you're saying is true. But it's, how should I put it? I believe, fact, every magazine reflects the beliefs and culture and style of its editors. And the editors of Back to Godhead they're wonderful devotees, they're very sincere, they're very Krishna conscious, and I think they are not exactly in touch with the Western world. So, I mean, for example, you can talk about a theocracy as sort of the Platonic form of spiritual government or something. But it's, for one thing, okay, a word about the Varna system. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Chaturvarnya Maya system, the Varna system. It is a system based very much on an agrarian economy. And in industrial and post-industrial economy, it's, things become very complicated. But I don't want to go on too long. I mean, we can talk about that later. But yeah, but suffice it to say that we have to be careful. I'll give you an example of like what not to put in a magazine. The devotees, when Prabhupada was here, actually, two of his disciples, actually well-known disciples, went to South Korea. And this was at the height of the Cold War. And you can imagine South Korea. If we felt the tension here, imagine when you're living in the capital of South Korea and you're literally like, a couple of miles down the road, there's all these nuclear missiles pointed at you. I mean, literally a couple of miles down the road. So the devotees went there, and with extraordinary, you could say transcendence, not really looking down, they published a magazine called Spiritual Communism. And then, 30 years later, we were allowed back in the country.
Oh boy.
Yes.
So, how do you pass the movement down from generation to generation, and how do you sustain it?
Well, parents have to teach their children. Oh, that's the easy answer. How do we sustain it? It's like a plane. You have to reach a certain velocity or it doesn't fly. The biggest problem we find with the kids of devotees, the young people, is that when you're a certain age, like what the young people are focused on is success. You want to be cool. You want to be hip. You want to be successful. You want to be respected. That becomes like a major obsession. And so, and I've had many of the most senior Prabhupada disciples in America tell this to me. I've had some of the most important leaders in North America tell me, if we would have had Krishna West back then, I would have saved my son. My son would still be in the Hare Krishna movement. So, I mean, of course, some children of devotees are just such great souls that they just sort of don't, it doesn't affect them. But for many devotee children, they get to a certain age, teenagers, when, they're extremely self-conscious, they really want to be cool and respected and everything, and they become very embarrassed. about belonging to a movement that so many people think is a little weird. And they don't, and it's like poison for them to be seen as weird or strange or not respectable, and they don't want to be seen with us. It's not everyone, but there's quite a significant number of devotee kids that have gone through that. And so here's another point about Krishna West, I think will save a lot more of our kids. Because if we have a Hare Krishna movement that is cool, that is growing, that's powerful, that's more and more respectable, they'll actually volunteer, like, can I be part of this? So I think, again, it's sort of like, I think Krishna West, I'm not saying this because Krishna did it through me as the instrument, but I really think it will solve a lot of problems. Because otherwise we have so many great devotees. We have the best philosophy, the best food. We have, wonderful, the holy name of Krishna is the most beautiful sound in the universe. So, I mean, everything is perfect except that we've lost our steam, we've lost our momentum. It's like a plane. A plane starts to slow down. You get to a certain velocity where you're in danger. You may not stay aloft. And so in the same way, the movement, the way I put it is, we call this a movement, but to call us a movement, is that a sociological reality or a linguistic habit? Are we really moving? And of course, in order for us to move, I mean, we have to be moving our spiritual life. Because something's at stake. When you realize that Prabhupada wanted you, everyone in this room, Prabhupada wanted you to be a guru. Prabhupada wanted everyone in this room to be a guru. To care about other people. To help other people become Krishna conscious. And when you realize that Prabhupada is urging you, begging you, to become a teacher of Krishna consciousness, you have to, as I say, clean up your own act. Because, well, I can't be a hypocrite. If we sort of take that, it's like a racket. It's like, I'm fallen, who am I? You sort of play the humility card, and then you can just walk free. I don't have to spread this movement. I don't have to preach. Just, play the humility card. But Prabhupada said that everyone should preach. And when you realize that Prabhupada is calling me to be a teacher, whatever level, he said, if you can preach to your family, do that. If you can preach to your neighborhood, if you can preach to your community, your city, whatever level you can do, just do that. But when you realize that because Prabhupada favored you and Krishna favored you and Krishna opened your eyes, therefore you have responsibility to other people. When you understand that, you become more serious about your own life. I guess maybe I shouldn't eat that. Maybe I shouldn't waste this time. Or maybe I shouldn't do this or that because after all, I don't want to be a hypocrite and Prabhupada wants me to be a teacher. So it really energizes your own spiritual life. And it energizes the kids, and we become contenders. Yes?
I just wanted to understand our approach for book distribution.
Yes.
We are distributing books, we are giving Bhagavad Gitas to Western people, door to door, And of course, that philosophy in the book is way too high for certain people to understand. So, what's your take on it? How do we exactly do this effective distribution?
I think our duty is to bring people to Prabhupada. Now, if that requires a bridge, because Prabhupada himself authorized bridge books. Even when Prabhupada was here, he personally authorized it. So, I believe that the top priority should be to give someone a book they can read and understand. Or they're likely to be able to read and understand. And because the goal is to bring them to Prabhupada. There's no question about that. We know what the destination is. So if by building a little bridge, we can get more people to Prabhupada's shelter, then we should do that.
But we're giving these books to someone who has not even heard about Krishna consciousness. And this philosophy in Bhagavad Gita, describes about the whole process.
That's a good point. And some people, there are some great souls that can read them and understand them, but all these things need to be looked at. We have to, in the early days of the movement, because we were so young and helpless, Prabhupada just said, just give my books out, just chant Hare Krishna, just don't think about it, just do it. Because back then, if we would have started thinking about it, God knows what would have come out of it. Because we were so young and immature, and just a little while before we had been whatever we were. But the point is, we're not babies anymore. Some of us. Yeah, in fact, there's a word for it. There's a logical argument Prabhupada used to quote. It's called Nagna Matrika Nyaya, which literally means the logic of the naked little mother. And Nagna Matrika Nyaya. And the logic is, Prabhupada used to give this example, that when your mother was a little baby girl, she went around naked. Does that mean that now she can go naked? In other words, people change, people grow up, and you can't do as an adult what you did as a baby. So there are actually some people in ISKCON. They mean well. I think they're very sincere, but they basically said, no, we should for the next 10,000 years we should act as if we're just little children. We don't think. We just go out and do this. But actually, what Prabhupada really needs and what wanted and asked for is that we now act like what we are. We're adults. Some of us have been in the movement almost half a century. And to say that now we should not think, we should not reason, we should not be innovative, we should act the same way we did, when we were just little spiritual infants, I think is absurd. Because now, we are not going to risk what Prabhupada feared. We're not going to become hippies again. He was really concerned about that. He says it all the time. Relapse into hippiedom, because hippies were just, whoa. So, no, we're not going to become hippies again. No, we're not going to philosophically deviate. No, we're not going to leave Prabhupada's ISKCON. No, we're not going to change the basic spiritual practice. We know that. We know the basics. Now, because we know the basics, we are fixed in the basics. We know Prabhupada. We have the freedom to do what we have to do to get the job done. And if someone says that this is not what we should do, I say to them, with all due respect, come and show us. And if you can do better at helping the Western world, I will follow your project. But as I say, lead, follow, or get out of the way. And this is what we have to do. Prabhupada needs us to do this. Prabhupada needs us to restore the relevance, the power, the growth of his Western mission, because Prabhupada's whole global strategy depends on it. The whole world's at stake. And so, if you got a better idea, show us, and I'll follow you. And tell the whole world I was wrong. Yes?
We're having a weekly Bhagavad Gita, we are going through the text number 2, chapter 2, and done very nicely by Aditya Prabhu.
By who?
And
Aditya. Yes, he's a very good teacher.
But we still, we are in the process of learning in that contradiction and, opposite kind of views coming from the same text kind of thing. One was that, you are a spiritual soul, that's what I'm repeating what he's saying verbatim. There's a spiritual soul, it has a desire. Keep it on the left side, keep it on the side. So then you come using your subtle mind, subtle body, subtle mind, using the subtle mind which composes of false ego and ignorance and stuff. It acts through the three modes, channels, mode of goodness, ignorance, and other one. So the perpetual question which I think a couple of us had was, how do you connect the dots from the physical, material plane to the spiritual plane? What's the bridge? I know there's a bridge, but where's the bridge? How it's fitting in a logical fashion?
Right. Good question. The bridge is that, as Krishna says in the Gita 7:4, that matter is also his energy. The material world. Therefore, matter, it's not, in the introduction to the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada begins by saying that there's a big difference between the concept of God and the concept of absolute truth. And he says the difference is the concept of God just means a supreme being. And often you get these dualistic worldviews, like good versus evil, matter is profane, spirit is holy. But in the concept of the absolute truth, which is Vedanta, Janma Adyasya Jata, everything emanates from Krishna. And therefore everything ultimately is spiritual. And so our body, for example, is not an enemy. The body is actually a precious gift that Krishna gave to us so that we can serve him and learn about ourselves and about him. So the bridge is re-spiritualizing matter. Now, what Krishna teaches in the Gita is judo. in the sense that you have, obviously we all have material body and mind. And these material bodies and mind have momentum. They have momentum. So, here's an example. You're driving your car, let's say 70 miles an hour on the freeway. You suddenly realize, I'm going the wrong direction. Now, from the moment you understand you're going in the wrong direction, you can't just slam on the brakes and flip your car over the median. From the moment you realize that, you gradually slow your car down, you look for an exit, you look for a place to turn around, you come back. And so, when you realize that material life is not the right direction, spiritual life. No, but your material mind and your body have momentum. That's what we call habits. And when the momentum is really high velocity, we call it needs. So we need to, this is what Prabhupada always said, it's a gradual process. You start to apply the brakes. You look for a place to exit. Like, for example, let's say you're in a job and you realize this job is not compatible with my Krishna consciousness, although most jobs are. Then you have to wait for an exit. And so just as if you slam on the brakes at high speed, you lose control of the car and you kill yourself, in the same way, you can't just slam on the brakes of your material life, but it's a question of guiding it into an exit and coming around. And Krishna, this is called Yukta Vairagya. This is called Yukta Vairagya. You know this term. Vairagya means detachment. And Yukta means detachment through serving Krishna. So Rupa Goswami says, Prapancha kataya buddhya hari sambandhi vastunaha mumukshubi parityago vairagyo phalgam katyate. That people who want liberation, they want spiritual liberation, but they look at some object. Let's say it could be your money, it could be your position, it could be whatever, it's anything about your external life. And they say, oh, that's material, therefore I should give it up. But actually, it is really Hari Sambandhi Vastu. It is an object which is connected to Krishna's service. And therefore, what Rupa Goswami teaches is that Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe, when you take those material things, he says if you give up things that you could have used for Krishna, you could have spiritualized them. You spiritualize your family, you spiritualize your wealth, you spiritualize your house, you spiritualize the contacts you have with the world, you spiritualize your abilities. So if you give it up, that's called Phalgu Vairagya, Vairagyam Phalgu. It is actually trivial or silly renunciation. But if you use those things for Krishna, if you use those same objects for Krishna, it becomes Yukta Vairagya. Renunciation by giving things to Krishna's service. You don't give them away, you give them to Krishna's service. And therefore you spiritualize them. They are spiritualizable because they are originally Krishna's spiritual energy. So because everything you have materially is originally Krishna's energy, and you see it that way, and by again using it for Krishna, it again manifests its spiritual quality. So the Prabhupada called this dovetailing. So that's the basic idea. Did that answer your question? Yes.
Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada did say many times in the past that one moon is better than a million stars. And at one point in ISKCON's history, at one point, in fact, in quite early years, Prabhupada did say that now we no longer have to spread any further. We have everything. Now we should boil the milk. We should boil the milk. So here, obviously, Prabhupada wanted his disciples to advance more qualitatively.
Okay. Yes, well said.
Yeah.
However, that's only half the story.
Okay, let me finish.
Okay, but even about that point, that's...
Okay. And Srila Prabhupada said
Yes.
that we should not boil the milk. And he said that if we are spread, if we become too big, I'm afraid things might get diluted. He did say that. And obviously Prabhupada wanted his disciples to develop more of an eternal relationship with Krishna.
Didn't you ask this question on Sunday?
No, sir.
Oh, someone did. Someone asked this very question on Sunday. But let me just say one thing before we go further. Let me just say one thing, because you have to understand the historical context. Prabhupada never said that we've expanded enough for all time. Prabhupada was doing what any good manager does. Let's say, for example, you own a company and you're producing something, whatever it is. You're I don't know, producing bicycles or manufacturing cars or computers, whatever it is. Now, let's say your business grows so quickly. Your business grows so quickly that you don't have enough qualified staff. You're kind of losing the quality control, losing control of quality. So what you do is, okay, this year we don't emphasize growth. We emphasize getting ourselves together, quality, putting the right people in the right places. And then once you do that, you grow again. So Prabhupada wasn't saying that, we don't need more Vaishnavas on planet Earth. He simply said at a certain point that we need balance, because in a healthy corporation, you emphasize growth, but you also emphasize quality control. And we had gotten out of balance. Prabhupada was rebalancing, not saying no more growth. And so boil the milk. So, unfortunately, we don't have that problem now. We don't grow so fast that that's even an issue. I pray to God we have that problem again. That we're growing so fast, we need to... And it's just the normal rhythm of corporate growth. That you expand, you get quality control, and you expand again, and again focus on quality. It's just a natural rhythm of corporate expansion. And Prabhupada never for a minute said that we never need to grow anymore. He never said that. In fact, he said the opposite. So as far as relationships, it's a good thing that you raised that point, because yes, we have to have great relationships. The most powerful, the most attractive thing we can show the world is that we actually like each other. I mean, you look at the spread of Latter-day Saints. For the Mormons, their philosophy, with all due respect, is not, probably not going to win philosophy awards. However, they're good people, and they really emphasize their families and taking care of their children and taking care of each other. And on those grounds, they've become so successful. So yes, relationships are all important. But frankly, I think that the best devotee relationships occur when we're working together to spread the movement. When we're being compassionate together.
I was just talking about relationship amongst devotees. What I'm particularly talking about is as Krishna West progresses, let's say, hopefully Krishna West will take off, and I pray that it will take off, because I love your vision. I love your whole idea about mobilizing and bringing about a renaissance of the Hare Krishna in here, especially here in the States. As Krishna West progresses, and we expand and we get lots of members, how is the leadership of Krishna West, not necessarily just you, but those who are taking up the positions of leaders, how is the leadership of Krishna West going to lead the followers deeper into the spirituality? Well,
clearly, the devotees in Krishna West have to be very Krishna conscious. They can't, and this is a very important point. We're not neglecting our own spiritual life. One principle which I take very seriously, I'm establishing, is that I don't pressure people. I encourage you, I'll try to enthuse you, but ultimately I don't want devotees to get themselves in a situation where they're under too much pressure and they have to neglect their spiritual life. I just don't push people to that point. And I really emphasize that devotees should do what works. They should have a comfortable, peaceful life, but work, hard for Krishna West. So yeah, I see it as my duty to make sure that people under me don't burn out, don't work too hard. We don't want them to be, we shouldn't be lazy, but we shouldn't work. Krishna says in the Gita, Vigata Jwara, we should be free of fever. Don't be feverish. In my own life, therefore I said, I'm very concerned about the physical health, the emotional health, intellectual and spiritual health. We want devotees who are healthy in every sense, who have beautiful families, who give, who love their children, who do everything nicely. So we're not going to use devotees as cannon fodder, in other words. So, I think maybe we'll have prasadam now? Sorry, but...